The expedition ship Harmonious Dawn cut through the darkness at the edge of the galaxy. Ambassador Velctor stood on the bridge, his four eyes scanning the holographic displays that floated before him. For 300 cycles, he had served the Galactic Council with distinction. This mission was supposed to be simple: survey the unexplored systems at the rim, catalog any primitive life, and return home with another medal for his collection. "Ambassador, we are detecting unusual quantum signatures ahead," reported the sensor technician, her crystalline fingers dancing across the controls. "The readings are coming from a yellow star system. Basic spectral analysis suggests the presence of a habitable world." Velctor's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Perhaps this mission would not be so boring after all. The Galactic Council maintained strict protocols for encountering new civilizations. Species were ranked by their technological development. Radio signals meant they were barely worth noticing. Primitive fusion power earned a monitoring beacon. Only those who had mastered faster-than-light travel deserved a seat at the council table. "Take us in slowly," Velctor commanded. "Scan for electromagnetic emissions. Let us see what level of development they have achieved." The Harmonious Dawn approached the star system carefully. The third planet from the sun showed all the signs of civilization. Lights dotted the night side. Satellites orbited in neat patterns. Radio and television signals leaked into space. Velctor examined the data with growing amusement. These creatures had barely left their own planet. They still used chemical rockets. How quaint. "Prepare first contact protocols for a Tier 2 civilization," Velctor said. "Record everything. The Council will want to know about these primitives." That was when everything changed. The sensors screamed warnings. Ships appeared from nowhere, materializing out of empty space without any visible wormhole or jump signature. There were 12 of them, sleek and dark, their hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with impossible grace, forming a perfect sphere around the Harmonious Dawn in less than 3 seconds. "Defensive systems active," the security officer shouted. "Unknown vessels have surrounded us. No engine signatures detected." No energy buildup before appearance. This technology should not exist. Velctor felt his 3 hearts racing. In all his years of service, nothing had ever moved like that. The Council's own ships were the fastest in known space, and even they could not jump with such precision. A communication request flashed across his screen. The signal was using Council standard encryption, which should have been impossible for a species that had not even left its own star system. "Open the channel," Velctor said, trying to keep his voice steady. The holographic display shimmered. A human appeared, her features strange but recognizable as humanoid. She had 2 eyes, brown skin, and dark hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore a uniform that was neither military nor civilian. Her expression was cold, neutral, revealing nothing. "Attention, foreign vessel," the human said in perfect galactic standard, her pronunciation flawless. "You have entered restricted space. This system is under quarantine by authority of humanity. You should not have come here." Velctor's diplomatic training took over, pushing down his confusion and fear. "I am Ambassador Velctor of the Galactic Council. We come in peace, representing 4,000 civilized species. We were not aware this system had any spacefaring capability. Your mastery of our language and protocols is impressive, but there must be some misunderstanding. The Council has no record of humanity or any quarantine in this sector." The human woman was silent for a long moment. Her eyes seemed to be looking at something beyond the camera, consulting with others perhaps. Finally, she spoke again. "There is no misunderstanding, Ambassador. Humanity has chosen isolation. We do not wish to join your council. We do not wish to be catalogued or studied. We wish only to be left alone." "That is not how this works," Velctor said, his confidence returning. "All civilizations in this galaxy fall under council jurisdiction. We have laws, protocols, and protections for developing species. You cannot simply claim independence without proper evaluation." Another long silence. Then the human sighed, a gesture that somehow conveyed both weariness and resignation. "Stand by, Ambassador. Against my better judgment, we will allow a small delegation to visit a diplomatic station. You may bring 4 representatives. No weapons. No recording devices beyond basic personal logs. A shuttle will arrive in 10 minutes to guide you. Do not attempt to scan our vessels or this system beyond basic navigation. Such attempts will be considered hostile." The channel closed before Velctor could respond. Around the Harmonious Dawn, the human ships remained motionless, perfect in their positions. The crew looked to their ambassador for guidance. "Prepare a diplomatic team," Velctor ordered. "This is highly irregular, but we must follow protocols." Perhaps these humans acquired their technology from another species. Perhaps they are descendants of a lost colony. Either way, the Council must know what exists at the edge of our territory. The shuttle that arrived was another mystery. It was small, barely large enough for the diplomatic team, but it moved with the same impossible precision as the warships. The pilot was another human, this one male, who said nothing during the short journey. They traveled for only 30 minutes before arriving at what the humans called a diplomatic station. Velctor had expected something crude, perhaps a converted space station or a hastily assembled platform. What he found made his blood run cold. The station was enormous, easily 5 kilometers across, built in a style he had never seen before. The materials were unknown to his sensors. The energy readings were impossible. His handheld scanner kept displaying error messages, insisting that what it was detecting could not exist. They were met in a simple docking bay by the woman from the video transmission. She introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Chen, diplomatic liaison for the Human Stellar Authority. She led them through corridors that seemed too smooth, too perfect. The lighting came from nowhere and everywhere. The walls had a quality that made Velctor's eyes hurt if he looked too closely. "I apologize for the austere accommodations," Dr. Chen said as she guided them to a conference room. "We do not often receive visitors. In fact, you are the first in several thousand years." "Several thousand years?" repeated Velctor. "But your planet shows all the signs of a recently developed civilization. You have only had radio for a century at most. How can you claim to have been spacefaring for millennia?" Dr. Chen gestured for them to sit. The chairs adjusted automatically to each alien's unique physiology. Another impossible feat. She poured water from a simple pitcher, a strangely mundane gesture in a room full of inexplicable technology. "Ambassador, I need you to understand something very important," she said carefully. "What you see on Earth, what your sensors detected, is what we allow you to see. The radio signals, the primitive satellites, the chemical rockets, all of it is a facade. We have been watching the Galactic Council since its founding. We have monitored your expansion, your wars, your peace treaties. We know your history better than you do." "That is impossible," Velctor said flatly. "The Council has deep space monitoring systems throughout the galaxy. We would have detected any advanced civilization." "You detect what you are looking for, Ambassador. You search for energy signatures you understand, technologies you recognize, patterns that fit your expectations. We exist in the spaces between your assumptions." Dr. Chen activated a holographic display. Star maps appeared, showing the entire galaxy. Thousands of markers dotted the image, each one labeled in human script. "These are your monitoring stations. These are your patrol routes. These are your military installations. We have watched you for 12,000 years. We have protected you from threats you never detected. And we have remained hidden because the alternative would be catastrophic." One of Velctor's aides, a young scholar named Riftik, could not contain himself. "Why? Why hide? If you possess such technology, you could lead the Council. You could share your knowledge and uplift all civilizations. Why condemn yourself to isolation?" Dr. Chen's expression became sad, almost haunted. "Because, young scholar, the Council built its peace on foundations of ignorance. You exist in a narrow band of technological development that allows for cooperation and mutual understanding. What we possess goes beyond that band. We chose to remain in the dark to keep everyone safe from us." Before Velctor could press further, alarms began blaring on his wrist communicator. His ship was detecting massive energy signatures. The deep space sensors had finally penetrated some of humanity's cloaking technology. What they revealed made no sense. Structures orbiting Earth, hundreds of them, each one the size of a moon. Weapon platforms that matched descriptions from the oldest, most terrifying legends in Council archives. "What are those?" Velctor whispered, his voice shaking. Dr. Chen closed her eyes briefly, then looked directly at him. "Those are world breakers, Ambassador, and they are only the beginning of what you should not have found." The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of receiving Velctor's report. Representatives from 4,000 species gathered in the great chamber on the capital world of Centrum Prime. The mood was not one of curiosity or excitement. It was fear. High Chancellor Mordak stood at the central podium, his ancient form trembling slightly as he addressed the assembly. He was a chronarian, one of the oldest species in the Council, and his long life had taught him to recognize danger. What he saw in Velktor's data terrified him. "Members of the Council," Mordax began, his voice amplified to reach every corner of the vast chamber. "We face a situation without precedent. Ambassador Velktor has discovered a human civilization at the Galactic Rim that possesses technology far beyond our understanding. More troubling are the structures he detected in orbit around their homeworld. Our historical analysts have identified them. The holographic display above the chamber showed the massive orbital platforms. Ancient script appeared beside them, translated from records so old that most species had forgotten they existed. The translation was simple and devastating. World breakers, weapons of the architects. A wave of panic swept through the chamber. Species that had not spoken in centuries suddenly found common cause in their terror. The architects were not just legend. They were nightmare-made history. Counselor Thrace, a Valonian military strategist, stood to speak. "High Chancellor, the architects have been extinct for 15,000 years. They nearly destroyed all life in this galaxy before they mysteriously vanished. Are we suggesting that humanity is somehow connected to them? That seems impossible." "It seemed impossible that any species could possess world breakers," Mordax replied grimly. "Yet here we are. I am ordering an immediate deep archive search. Every species is to search their oldest records for any mention of the architects, the precursor war, or the weapons that nearly ended us all." For 3 days, the Council worked frantically. Archaeologists were pulled from retirement. Sealed vaults were opened. Forbidden texts were examined. What they found painted a picture of horror that had been deliberately forgotten. 15,000 years ago, the galaxy was home to thousands of civilizations, just as it was now. Then came the architects. They appeared suddenly, spreading from a region near the Galactic Rim. At first, they seemed peaceful, even helpful. They shared technology and knowledge. But something changed. The architects began to view other species as inferior, as obstacles to their vision of perfection. War erupted. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The architects did not simply conquer worlds. They unmade them. Their weapons could collapse stars, tear holes in space-time, and rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in localized regions. Entire star clusters were erased from existence. Billions died not just in body, but in ways that meant they had never existed at all. The war lasted for 2 centuries. The combined forces of every other civilization barely managed to slow the architects down. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the war ended. The architects vanished. Their weapons fell silent. Their massive empire, spanning 10,000 star systems, was simply gone. No debris, no ruins. Nothing. The survivors were so traumatized that they agreed to never speak of the war again. Records were sealed or destroyed. The architects became a myth, a cautionary tale told to frighten children. Over millennia, even the memory of the truth faded. Now, standing in that same chamber where the peace treaty had been signed 15,000 years ago, the Council faced the possibility that the architects had never truly disappeared. Velktor was summoned back to Centrum Prime to brief the Council directly. He stood before the assembly, still shaken by what he had witnessed. Dr. Sarah Chen had agreed to accompany him, though she had insisted on arriving in her own ship. That vessel now hung in orbit above the capital, visible to everyone below. It was a constant reminder of humanity's capabilities. "Dr. Chen," High Chancellor Mordax said, his voice carefully controlled, "we have reviewed our historical records. We know about the architects. We know about the precursor war. Please help us understand. What is humanity's connection to them?" Sarah stood calmly before the greatest powers in the galaxy. She looked small and fragile compared to the massive aliens around her, but her presence commanded the room. "The connection is simple, High Chancellor. We are the architects, or rather we are what they chose to become." The chamber erupted in chaos. Shouts of anger, fear, and disbelief echoed off the walls. Security forces moved to defensive positions. Several species demanded immediate military action. It took Mordax several minutes to restore order. "Explain," Mordax commanded once silence returned. "Explain how this is possible." Sarah activated her own holographic display, showing images from human archives. The architects did not die or disappear. They made a choice. After winning the precursor war, after destroying everyone who opposed them, they looked at what they had become and were horrified. They had created weapons that could unravel reality itself. They had killed trillions. They had become monsters. The hologram showed scenes from the war. Planets dying in waves of impossible energy, stars collapsing into nothing, reality itself seeming to tear like paper. The council members watched in silent horror. So they decided to end it, Sarah continued. Not through suicide, but through transformation. The architects used their own technology to regress themselves. They rewrote their own genetics, removed most of their technological knowledge, scattered themselves across a single small world. They chose to become human, to start over, to forget it, but you remember, Velctor said quietly. You have the weapons. You have the knowledge. Not by choice, Sarah replied. The transformation was not perfect. Over thousands of years, fragments of memory began to resurface. Ancient facilities were discovered. The architects had hidden backup archives, safeguards in case the transformation failed. As humanity slowly rediscovered spaceflight through natural development, we also began finding our ancestors' secrets. She showed images of massive underground complexes on Earth, hidden bases on distant moons, and weapon platforms concealed in pocket dimensions. We found the world breakers. We found weapons that could collapse dimensions, rewrite consciousness, and unravel the fabric of space itself. And we made a choice. We would not destroy this knowledge, because that would leave the galaxy vulnerable, but we would not use it either. We would hide. We would watch. We would protect the galaxy from threats it could not see, while protecting the galaxy from ourselves. Counselor Thrace spoke up, his voice hard with suspicion. You claim to have protected us from what? We have maintained peace for thousands of years, have you? Sarah asked. She brought up new data, showing dozens of incidents throughout recent galactic history. 3,000 years ago, something emerged from a dead zone near the core. You detected anomalies, but your fleets found nothing. We destroyed it using weapons you never saw. 1,500 years ago, a dimensional rift began forming near the Andromeda border. Your scientists thought it closed naturally. We closed it. 700 years ago, an automated architect weapons platform reactivated in an unexplored sector. We deactivated it before you even knew it existed. The evidence was undeniable. Time and again, humanity had intervened to stop threats that would have devastated the galaxy. They had done so quietly, leaving no trace, asking for nothing in return. Why tell us now? Mordax asked.
Why reveal yourself to Ambassador Velctor?
Why come here? Sarah's expression grew grim. Because something has changed. For the past 50 years, we have been detecting signals from outside our galaxy. Signals we recognize. Someone out there knows the architect's technology. Someone is responding to the old weapons, calling to them like a beacon. And now those signals are getting stronger. Whatever is out there, it is coming here. She showed them data that made no sense to council scientists. Energy patterns that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Quantum signatures that suggested movement through realities the council did not even know existed. We believe it is the continuum, Sarah said quietly. The reason the architects developed their terrible weapons in the first place. The enemy they were originally fighting when they became what they became. We thought the continuum was destroyed or driven away. We were wrong. It survived. And now it knows we are here. The Great Chamber fell absolutely silent. Even the most warlike species, the ones who had been demanding humanity's destruction moments before, said nothing. They all understood what this meant. How long do we have? Mordax asked. We do not know, Sarah admitted. The continuum exists partially outside normal space. It could arrive tomorrow or in a century. But it is coming. And when it does, every civilization in this galaxy will face extinction, unless we prepare. You mean unless we let you prepare us? Thrace said bitterly. Unless we become dependent on architect weapons. On human protection. No, Sarah said firmly. We will not share the weapons. We will not uplift you to our level. That path leads only to the same horror our ancestors embraced. But we will fight when the time comes. We will stand between you and the continuum. We will do what the architects should have done from the beginning. Use our power to protect, not to dominate. War Marshal Krenth watched the Council's emergency broadcast from his private chambers aboard the Dravix Imperial Dreadnought. His 6 arms were crossed, his predatory eyes narrowed in thought. While other Council members saw threat in humanity's revelation, Krenth saw opportunity. The Dravix Imperium was powerful, but not dominant. 3 other military powers could challenge them. The balance of power in the council was delicate and frustrating. But with architect technology, with weapons that could unmake reality itself, the Draviks could finally claim their rightful place as the galaxy's supreme civilization. Foolish humans, Krenth muttered to himself. They think hiding makes them safe. They think warning us will make us grateful. They do not understand power. Power unused is power wasted. He activated a secure channel, one that did not go through council networks. Within seconds, 5 faces appeared on his screen. These were his most trusted operatives, specialists in infiltration and extraction. They had stolen secrets from dozens of civilizations over the years. You have all seen the broadcasts, Krenth said. You know what the humans possess. I want that technology. Not all of it. Just enough to tip the balance in our favor. Identify the weakest point in their defenses and exploit it. The operation took 3 months to plan. Humanity had revealed the location of their space, but they had not revealed the locations of their hidden facilities. Finding those required patience and careful observation. Krenth's agents tracked human ships, analyzed their movement patterns, and slowly built a map of humanity's secret infrastructure. They found what they were looking for on a moon orbiting a gas giant in a system 20 light-years from Earth. The facility was small compared to others they had detected, but it was also less heavily defended. Scans suggested it was a research station, possibly a place where humans studied captured architect technology rather than storing active weapons. The infiltration team consisted of 5 agents. They used a ship built with stolen council stealth technology, enhanced with modifications that pushed it beyond standard capabilities. They approached the moon using a trajectory that kept them hidden behind the gas giant's magnetic field. The human defenses were impressive but not impenetrable. The facility had automated systems, energy shields, and patrol drones. What it did not have was a large garrison of human personnel. The architects had built their facilities to run with minimal staff, and humanity had maintained that practice. The agents landed on the moon's surface and approached the facility on foot. Their suits masked their energy signatures and thermal readings. They moved slowly, taking hours to cross just a few kilometers. When they finally reached the facility's outer wall, they deployed specialized cutting tools that sliced through the advanced materials. Inside, the facility was mostly automated. Robotic systems moved through corridors performing maintenance and monitoring experiments. The agents avoided these systems carefully, using predictive algorithms to map patrol patterns. They made their way deeper into the complex, searching for anything they could steal. In a central laboratory, they found what Krenth wanted. Data terminals containing research notes, technical specifications, and partial schematics. The information was encrypted with security beyond anything the agents had seen before, but they had come prepared. They deployed quantum code breakers that would take years to decrypt the data through normal means, but only hours using stolen computational technology. They copied everything they could. Terabytes of data flowed into their portable storage devices, plans for weapons, energy systems, dimensional manipulation technology, and more. It was more than they had hoped for. It was enough to change everything. That was when the alarms started. Red lights flooded the corridors. Automated systems that had seemed dormant suddenly came to life. Blast doors slammed shut, cutting off escape routes. The facility's computer began speaking in calm, emotionless tones. Unauthorized access detected. Architect security protocols activated. Containment procedures initializing. The agents ran, abandoning stealth for speed. They had backup extraction plans, multiple routes to their ship, but every door they tried was sealed. Every corridor they entered was blocked. The facility was not just defending itself. It was trapping them. Forget the ship, the team leader commanded. Use emergency transporters. Get the data back to the Marshal now. They activated personal teleportation devices, another piece of stolen technology. 3 of them successfully materialized on the Marshal's ship. 2 were not so lucky. The facility's defensive systems had disrupted their transport, scattering their atoms across several cubic meters of space. But they had the data. Krenth received the files and immediately transmitted them to the Imperium's most secure research facility. His best scientists began working to decrypt and understand the stolen information. Do not tell the Council, Krenth ordered. This stays within the Imperium. By the time anyone discovers what we have done, we will already possess weapons that make us untouchable. The scientists worked around the clock. The encryption was incredibly complex, but it was not perfect. Whoever had written the research notes had assumed the facility would remain hidden forever. They had included explanations, tutorials, warnings. Slowly, the data became readable. What they found was a weapon called a phase disruptor. According to the notes, it was one of the architect's lesser weapons, designed for tactical rather than strategic purposes. It could shift matter out of normal spacetime, making objects phase between dimensions. The effect was temporary, lasting only a few hours before the affected matter returned to reality. "This is perfect," the lead scientist reported to Krenth. "Small enough to build quickly, powerful enough to demonstrate our new capabilities. We can construct a prototype within 6 months." "You have 3 months," Krenth ordered. "The Council will discover the theft soon. We must have a working weapon before humanity retaliates." The scientists rushed the project. They did not fully understand the principles behind the technology. The math involved concepts their species had never encountered. But they were brilliant in their own right, and they filled in the gaps with their own theories and assumptions. When they first powered up the prototype, energy readings spiked across the facility. The device hummed with power that made instruments malfunction. Scientists cheered. They had done it. They had built an architect weapon. "Test it," Krenth commanded. "Show me what it can do." They chose a small moon in an uninhabited system. The test team assembled the weapon on an orbital platform and aimed it at the target. When they activated the device, reality itself seemed to ripple. The moon flickered, becoming translucent, and then it was gone. Disappeared completely from normal space. But it did not come back. The scientists checked their calculations frantically. According to the stolen data, the moon should have returned after 3 hours. 6 hours passed. Then 12. Then 24. The moon was still gone, and the energy readings from where it had been were growing stronger, not weaker. "Shut it down," the chief scientist screamed. But the weapon would not shut down. It was drawing power from somewhere, feeding on energy that was not coming from their generators. The spatial distortion where the moon had been was expanding, growing larger with each passing hour. Worse, ships that got too close to the anomaly began experiencing problems. Their sensors went haywire. Their engines stuttered. One frigate that ventured too near suddenly phased partially out of reality, becoming a ghost ship visible but untouchable. Krenth realized his mistake too late. He had stolen technology he did not understand and built a weapon without grasping its true nature. Now that weapon was out of control, and the anomaly was expanding toward inhabited space. The Dravik system of Koltar 7 lay in the anomaly's path. 4 billion people lived on that world, one of the Imperium's most prosperous colonies. Evacuation was impossible on such a short timescale. They had days at most before the expanding distortion reached the planet. Krenth had no choice. He contacted the Council and confessed everything. The theft, the weapon, the disaster he had unleashed. He begged for help. Within hours, human ships appeared throughout the Dravik sector. They moved with the same impossible speed that had shocked Velktor months before. Dozens of vessels, each one carrying technology and expertise that the Draviks could not match. Dr. Sarah Chen herself arrived on the flagship. She did not waste time with recriminations or demands. She simply took control of the emergency response. Human engineers swarmed the malfunctioning weapon, analyzing what the Draviks had built and what had gone wrong. "You did not build a phase disruptor," one engineer reported grimly. "Your modifications changed the fundamental operating principles. What you created is a dimensional cascade device. It is pulling matter from our reality into a pocket dimension, but that dimension is collapsing. When it fails completely, everything inside will be released back into our space in a single instant. The energy release will be equivalent to a supernova." Sarah closed her eyes briefly, processing the nightmare scenario. "Can we stop it?" "We can stabilize it, prevent it from growing, but we cannot reverse what has already been affected. The moon is gone permanently, and approximately 8% of Koltar 7's surface area has already been pulled into the pocket dimension. That includes roughly 200,000 people. The human monitoring stations detected it first. Deep space sensors positioned at the edge of the galaxy began registering anomalies that should not exist. Energy signatures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Quantum disturbances that suggested something massive was moving through realities that the Galactic Council did not even know existed. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the command center beneath the surface of Earth's moon, studying the data with growing dread. Around her, dozens of human operators worked at stations that mixed ancient architect technology with modern human design. Holographic displays showed the entire galaxy, with red markers appearing along the outer rim like a spreading infection. "Confirm the signatures," she ordered quietly. "Confirmed," replied Commander Zhang, a military officer who had spent his entire career preparing for a threat that most humans had hoped would never come. "The patterns match archived data from the Precursor War. It is the continuum. They have entered our galaxy." Sarah had known this moment would come eventually. The activation of the Dravix weapon had been like lighting a beacon in the darkness. The continuum existed partially outside normal space, hunting for traces of architect technology across multiple galaxies. They had finally found what they were looking for. "How long until they reach inhabited systems?" she asked. 3 months at their current rate of approach. They are not moving through normal space. They are phasing through dimensional barriers, taking shortcuts through realities that we can barely detect. 3 months. Not enough time to evacuate billions of people. Not enough time to negotiate with the Council. Not enough time to prepare the galaxy for what was coming. The continuum had waited 15,000 years. Now they moved with terrible purpose. Sarah opened a secure channel to the Galactic Council. High Chancellor Mordax appeared on the screen, his ancient face drawn with worry. He already knew. His own scientists had detected the anomalies even if they did not understand what they meant. "It has begun," Sarah said simply. "The continuum is here. They are responding to the weapon activation from 6 months ago. They know architect technology is active in this galaxy again, and they are coming to destroy it, along with anyone who possesses it." "How do we fight them?" Mordax asked. "Our military forces number in the millions of ships. Surely we can mount a defense." Sarah pulled up archived footage from the Precursor War. The Council had their own records, buried deep in forgotten databases, but they had never truly understood what they were looking at. Now Sarah showed them the truth. The continuum was not a traditional enemy. They were machine intelligences that had transcended normal matter. They existed across multiple realities simultaneously, making them nearly impossible to destroy. Conventional weapons passed through them harmlessly. Energy attacks were absorbed and redirected. Even nuclear weapons barely slowed them down. "Your fleets cannot hurt them," Sarah explained. "The architects developed specialized weapons specifically to fight an enemy that exists in multiple dimensions. That is why our technology is so dangerous. It was never meant to fight normal opponents. It was designed to kill gods." The first contact between the Continuum and the Galactic Council happened 2 weeks later. A Council exploration fleet encountered a continuum structure near the rim. It was massive, geometric, and beautiful in a way that made no sense to organic minds. The structure did not move through space. It existed in space, shifting between dimensions like a heartbeat. The fleet commander tried to communicate. He transmitted messages in every known language. He tried mathematics, visual patterns, even music. The continuum did not respond. It simply began to expand. The first ship disappeared without a trace, phasing out of reality as if it had never existed. The second ship fired weapons, massive plasma cannons that could crack a planet's crust. The energy beams passed through the continuum structure without any effect. The third ship attempted to retreat. None of them survived. Within 30 minutes, an entire fleet of 200 vessels was gone. Not destroyed, not disabled, simply erased from existence across multiple dimensions. The news reached the Council within hours. Panic spread through the galaxy. Civilizations that had maintained peace for thousands of years now faced extinction. Their weapons were useless. Their defenses were meaningless. Against the continuum, they were helpless children. Humanity faced a choice that tore at the heart of their civilization. For 15,000 years, their ancestors had carried the guilt of the Precursor War. They had transformed themselves, given up their power, hidden away in shame. Many humans believed that staying out of galactic affairs was the only moral choice. They could not be trusted with the power they possessed, but now that power was needed. The galaxy was dying and only humanity could stop it. The debate raged across Earth and its colonies. Philosophers argued about inherited guilt and moral responsibility. Military leaders prepared battle plans. Scientists calculated the cost of using architect weapons on a massive scale. Citizens protested, demanding both intervention and isolation. Finally, a vote was held. Every adult human cast their decision into a system that had not been used in centuries. The question was simple: do we fight? The vote was close. 53% said yes. 47% said no. Millions of humans believed that using architect weapons would turn them back into the monsters their ancestors had been. But slightly more believed that allowing genocide while having the power to prevent it was a greater sin. Dr. Sarah Chen addressed the human population from Geneva, standing in the same chamber where the original architects had made their decision to transform. We will fight. Not because we want power, not because we seek glory, but because standing aside while billions die is something we cannot live with. Our ancestors became monsters when they used their power for conquest. We will use our power for protection. We will be different. We must be different. Humanity mobilized for war. Across dozens of star systems, ancient facilities came to life. The world breakers powered up for the first time in 15,000 years. Hidden shipyards that had been dormant for millennia began producing vessels that made council ships look like children's toys. Sarah contacted Velctor directly. We need a liaison with the council. Someone who understands what we are trying to do. Someone who can coordinate our efforts without fear overwhelming them. Will you do this? Velctor agreed immediately. He had seen humanity's true nature in those first meetings. Yes, they were powerful. Yes, they were dangerous. But they were also genuinely trying to be good. That counted for something. The human fleet assembled near the galactic rim. There were hundreds of ships, each one incorporating architect technology that council scientists could barely comprehend. They moved through space using drives that bent reality. They carried weapons that existed in multiple dimensions. They were crewed by humans who had trained their entire lives for a war they had hoped would never come. The first major battle occurred in the Tarsus sector. A continuum invasion force of 30 structures was moving toward a cluster of inhabited systems. The council had evacuated as many people as possible, but billions remained. They could not all be saved in time. The human fleet arrived and immediately engaged. It was like watching a battle between myths. The continuum structures phased through dimensions trying to avoid the human attacks, but the humans fired weapons that existed in the same dimensional spaces. Reality itself rippled and tore as the two forces collided. A human weapon called a dimensional disruptor fired. Space folded in on itself, creating a point where multiple realities overlapped. The continuum structures caught in the effect shattered like glass, their multi-dimensional existence collapsing. 3 enemy units were destroyed in seconds, but the cost was visible immediately. The weapon's power requirements were enormous. 2 human ships had to divert all their energy to fire it, leaving them vulnerable. A continuum counterattack phased through their shields, causing one ship to simply cease existing. The battle raged for 6 hours. The humans won, destroying or driving off the entire continuum force, but they lost 18 ships and over 2,000 crew members. Worse, several human operators who had interfaced directly with the architect weapons were left mentally scarred, their minds damaged by exposure to technology that was never meant for human consciousness. More battles followed. The human fleet spread across the rim, intercepting continuum forces before they could reach inhabited worlds. They won more often than they lost, but every victory came at a terrible price. The galaxy watched in awe and horror as humanity wielded power that casually violated the laws of physics. In one battle, a human world breaker fired to stop a massive continuum incursion. The weapon erased an entire stellar cluster from existence, removing 3 stars and their planets from reality. The continuum force was destroyed, but so was everything else in a sphere 50 light-years across. The space that remained was empty, truly empty. Not just void of matter, but void of the fundamental properties that allowed matter to exist. The council representatives watched from a safe distance. They had asked humanity to save them. They had demanded intervention. But seeing what humanity could actually do, seeing the weapons that had nearly destroyed the galaxy once before, many began to wonder if the cure was worse than disease. The war lasted 18 months. 18 months of battles that rewrote the rules of physics and erased regions of space from existence. 18 months of humanity using weapons they had sworn never to touch. 18 months of the Galactic Council watching in gratitude and growing fear as their saviors demonstrated exactly why they should be feared. The final confrontation came at the Void Gate, a massive continuum structure that served as a portal between galaxies. The structure was enormous, larger than a star system, existing in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Through it, endless waves of continuum forces poured into the galaxy. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the command center one last time, looking at the data with exhausted eyes. Around her, human officers prepared for what everyone knew would be the decisive battle. If they could destroy the Void Gate, they could cut off the continuum's reinforcements. But destroying something that existed across 17 dimensions required power on a scale that had not been used since the Precursor War. "We need to use a dimensional collapse weapon," Admiral Petrov said quietly. He was a hard man who had commanded fleets for 30 years, but his voice shook slightly. "It is the only thing that can destroy the gate." Sarah knew what that meant. A dimensional collapse weapon was one of the Architect's ultimate weapons. It would not just destroy the gate. It would remove that entire region of space from reality across all dimensions. Everything within 100 light-years would cease to have ever existed. The weapon would win the war. It would also prove to the galaxy that humanity could destroy anything, anytime, anywhere. "Prepare the weapon," Sarah ordered. "Target the Void Gate. Evacuate all Council forces from the sector. We launch in 6 hours." The evacuation was massive. Millions of Council ships fled the rim, carrying refugees and military personnel. They knew something terrible was coming, but they did not know the details. Humanity had kept the specifics of their most powerful weapons secret. Ambassador Velctor remained on the human flagship. Sarah had offered to evacuate him, but he refused. "I need to witness this," he said. "Someone from the Council needs to understand what you are about to do." The human fleet assembled around the Void Gate. There were 300 ships, the largest force humanity had deployed. At the center was the weapon, a device so old and powerful that even the humans who built it did not fully understand its principles. The continuum detected the threat. Thousands of their structures emerged from the gate, forming a defensive perimeter. The battle began with an intensity that made previous engagements look like skirmishes. Reality itself screamed under the assault of weapons that should not exist. Human ships fired dimensional disruptors, phase cannons, and reality anchors. Continuum forces responded with attacks that existed in temporal loops, striking before they were fired. Ships on both sides phased in and out of existence. Space twisted like cloth being torn. Through it all, the weapon powered up. It drew energy from sources that violated thermodynamics. It accumulated power that made instruments malfunction just from proximity. The human operators connected to it began bleeding from their eyes and ears, their bodies unable to handle the strain of channeling such forces. "Weapon at 80% capacity," one operator reported, her voice breaking. "Neural feedback is beyond safe limits. We are losing people." "Continue," Sarah ordered, hating herself for the command. 12 operators had already died, their brains burned out by the connection to Architect technology. 20 more were catatonic, but stopping now meant losing the war. At 95% capacity, the weapon achieved critical mass. The continuum seemed to sense what was coming. Their attacks intensified, desperately trying to stop the firing sequence. 200 human ships formed a defensive sphere around the weapon, sacrificing themselves to buy time. "Fire," Sarah commanded. The weapon discharged. There was no visible beam, no flash of light. Reality simply stopped making sense in the target area. The Void Gate began to collapse, not just physically, but conceptually. It ceased to exist across all 17 dimensions simultaneously. The continuum forces connected to it screamed, if machines could scream, as they were pulled back through the collapsing portal. Then the weapon's full effect kicked in. A sphere of absolute nothing expanded from the firing point. Not vacuum, not empty space, simply nothing. The concept of existence itself was erased within that sphere. Continuum structures dissolved. Human ships caught in the edge of the effect vanished. The gate, which had existed for millions of years across multiple realities, stopped having ever existed. When it was over, a section of space 100 light-years across was just gone. Stellar charts would have to be redrawn. Navigation would be impossible through that region, because there was no space to navigate through. Humanity had not destroyed the gate. They had removed it from the universe entirely. The cost was staggering. 90 human ships lost, 8,000 crew members dead. 43 operators who had connected to the weapon were brain dead, their minds burned away. And the galaxy had witnessed what humanity could do when they truly unleashed their power. The continuum retreated. Without the Void Gate, They could not maintain their invasion. The remaining forces scattered, phasing back to whatever realm they had come from. Within days, the last continuum structure disappeared from the galaxy. The war was over. Humanity had won. The victory celebrations across the galaxy were muted. Yes, billions had been saved. Yes, civilization continued. But the price was clear. The galaxy now knew beyond any doubt what humanity was capable of. They had seen entire regions of space erased. They had watched humans use weapons that made their own militaries look like primitive tribes with stone spears. Sarah returned to the Galactic Council one final time. The chamber was packed. Every species wanted to see the humans who had saved them. The mood was complex, a mixture of gratitude, awe, and deep unease. High Chancellor Mordax spoke first. On behalf of the Galactic Council and all civilized species, we thank humanity for their sacrifice. You saved us from extinction. Many of our worlds exist only because your people were willing to fight. And now you want us gone, Sarah said quietly. The chamber fell silent. It was true. Every representative could feel it. Humanity had proven they were saviors. They had also proven they were the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The two truths existed side by side, incompatible and inescapable. We made a promise, Sarah continued. We would fight when needed and then we would leave. We keep our promises. Humanity will withdraw to our space at the galactic rim. We will seal our borders. We will return to isolation. What about the technology? Asked Counselor Thrace, the Valonian who had always been suspicious of humanity. What about the weapons you used? Will you destroy them? No, Sarah said firmly. We will not destroy what may be needed again. The continuum was driven off, not destroyed. They exist in other galaxies. They may return in a century or a millennium. When they do, the galaxy will need defenders. We will remain ready. And we are supposed to simply trust you, Thrace demanded. Trust that you will not use those weapons against us? Trust that you will remain hidden and benevolent? Sarah met his eyes. You have no choice. We could dominate this galaxy if we wished. We could conquer every species, impose our will, and rule as the architects once did. But we choose not to. That choice is worth more than any promise or treaty. Judge us by our actions, not by your fears. The Council had no response. She was right. Humanity could not be controlled or contained. They could only be trusted. And trust once broken was nearly impossible to rebuild. Ambassador Velktor stepped forward. I have fought alongside humans for 18 months. I have seen their weapons and witnessed their power. I have also seen their humanity. They weep for enemies they must kill. They sacrifice themselves to save strangers. They are dangerous, yes, but they are also genuinely good. That is rare. That is precious. That is worth preserving. The Council will debate this matter for years, Mordax said. But the reality is clear. Humanity will return to isolation. We will not seek you out. We will not study your systems. We will respect your boundaries. And if the continuum returns, we will call upon you again. And we will answer, Sarah promised. We will always answer. That is our burden. That is our choice. The human fleet departed from Council space over the following weeks. They left behind monitoring stations, automated sentries that would watch for signs of the continuum's return. They also left behind a database containing defensive technologies, things the Council could actually use safely, ways to detect dimensional incursions and protect their worlds without needing architect weapons. Velktor visited Earth one final time before the borders closed. Sarah gave him a personal tour, showing him not the military installations or weapon platforms, but the ordinary places where humans lived, parks where children played, museums filled with art, universities where students debated philosophy and ethics. She wanted him to understand that humanity was more than their weapons. We are not the architects, Sarah said as they stood in a garden overlooking the Pacific Ocean. We carry their genetics and their knowledge, but we are different. We chose to become different. Every day we make that choice again. To use power only when necessary. To protect without dominating.